Hey everyone, welcome back to Looking Outside. Today we're taking a closer look at the food industry, but not of today, of the future, and how food technology, innovation, and branding is evolving. Joining me today on the show is food entrepreneur, CEO, and co-founder of Heura Foods and Good Rebel, Marc Coloma. Hey Marc.
Hello, amazing pronunciation. Congratulations.
I always struggle with these things, but I've been saying Eura Foods to so many people because I've been just like raving about your brand. So I've had a little bit of practice.
Such an honor. Thanks.
Let's start with a little bit of an introduction into who Marc is.
Mark is someone very curious, an entrepreneur that loves challenges, problems, and try to be part of the solution. No? And I think that all that led to start it very early on in social entrepreneurship and starting Eura Foods with Bernardo Ñaños and the other co-founder. And most of my time goes into moving forward the mission that we have in Eura Foods, that it's at the end the bold dream of contributing to build a net positive food system. No? At the end, there are many sectors that we are aware that we have to transform, but the food industry is one of them that we are in relationship with it every day. But sometimes we are very distant about its challenges. It's interesting that nowadays in our society, the biggest cause of death is cardiovascular disease and cancer, very linked to lifestyle. So at the end, what we are trying to do is create foods that are part of the solution, that have a better metabolic impact, nutrient dense, and help us to live better lives, but also are good for the planet at the same time, but without losing what we love in food, making indulgent foods that people really love, keep eating what they love, but making it much healthier, much sustainable. We started in plant-based meats, but we are going to other categories as well.
Amazing. And they're definitely delicious. I can attest to that. When I was in Barcelona, Marc and your chef, what was his name?
Alex.
Alex cooked me up, not really samples. I've been telling people it was like full meals, and I had like burgers and wraps and salads, and it was all absolutely delicious. So well done on doing exactly as you are aspiring to do, which is to create more nutritious food that is not compromising on the enjoyment of food, which I think is a really important crossover point where the food industry is headed into. So let's go back to what you said before about being an entrepreneur and kind of starting Eura with your co-founder. Have you always been kind of an entrepreneur at heart, and something that you've always wanted to do is to start your own business?
Already since I was a child, I was the typical child that will ask 5, 10 times why, until people ask that person to shut up. So I was this kind of person, but also very rebellious. And this mixed with adolescence was a perfect bond. And I went straight to social activism very early on, but very entrepreneurial. I remember that in high school there was a bar in the high school that I was part of that closed. And I decided to open it up with some friends in order to get funding, in order to do the activities that we were doing. And from there, I even, when I was 18, going straight to lead an international NGO in Catalonia. And with this idea of how to be more impactful in the things that matter to me, it's what led me to do Eura, in order to empower people to reduce the friction that sometimes exists between our values and our behaviors, how to create offerings that are already part of the solution, but anchored in the behaviors that we are already having today.
And you're giving people such an easy way to do that, because they don't really have to change their behavior. They can just swap the product that they're buying, still enjoy, a great burger, for example, but feel a little bit better about it, that it meets their values. And so when you said Catalonian, so obviously the Eura brand is founded in Barcelona, and it's now expanded across Europe. I mean, it was founded in 2017. How many countries in Europe are you sold through now?
So we started in 2017 in Barcelona, as you mentioned, focusing in plant-based meats. And from there, we expanded to most of the European countries. We are present in more than 20 countries in general. We are leading the market in the south of Europe. This means Spain, Portugal, France, and Italy as a whole. But we have distribution across many European countries.
Fabulous. So how important is it to you to keep Heura as a Spanish company or a Spanish brand or a Catalonian brand? Like, is that still important to you?
At the end, it speaks about origins or origin, and it's part of our name, no? Eura Foods mean climbing plant in Catalan, for example. Not many people know that, but at the end, also it talks about no the Mediterranean roots that we want to. That are part of the essence of what we bring to the food industry. No, when we think about Mediterranean food, we think of great taste and health. So that was part of the branding that we wanted to push and internationalize to the world. No, we are dreaming into creating something international that many people reflect on. These successors concepts, no, are bringing together taste, sustainability, and high value nutrition, and at the same time, no, empowering people to do what they believe with all the good rebels movement that is part of our brand.
Yeah, and you mentioned that a little bit before, the focus on nutrition with Eura and what you're doing. There's obviously a trend that's kind of been around for a long time, but I think is seeing a little bit of a resurgence around food as medicine. Is that something that's kind of at the heart of what you're trying to do, is to bring together kind of the natural benefits of great nutritious food, but also leveraging science to get the most out of it?
Exactly. At the end, we go back to the mission, no, to dream about the net positive food system, no, that contributes more to the world and society than it takes. No, I think that it's a utopia, but at least we walk this road every day. And it's not only a revolution about the establishment, no, and the incumbent foods. It's a revolution against ourselves every day, no. This idea about that we can do better, no, and that's what we pursue. And this is very linked to what you said, no, investing a lot in science and technology to keep developing new scientific knowledge that will land into technologies that will allow us to, no, to achieve the indulgence and the taste that we are looking after and textures, but through ingredients that have a better metabolic impact. No, it's interesting that when we analyze what we were talking about, the cardiovascular problems that we have in our societies, because long time ago people was dying for disease that existed in society. Right now it's non-communicable disease, no, so we are in control of having a better life. So at the end, when we look at the disbalance of our diets, what we see is that products that are based on ingredients, no, that have a negative metabolic impact are over ponderating from the diets that will be recommended, no, and it means saturated fats, simple carbohydrates, among others, no. But when we look, for example, the space of legumes, it's very reduced, no. And the interesting things of what we are doing in order to achieve what you were mentioning is how we go back, no, to legumes in order to be able to structure from them and through them textures and full products with the same sensorial attributes that will have these products that right now are done through ingredients that we should be avoiding, no? And it goes to animal meat products as an example, with the saturated fats, the cholesterol, and also in processed meat all the carcinogenic element, but also even in very indulgent products like very fatty and creamy, like from a Nutella to other kind of products, no. So it's interesting that we are being able that through legumes expand the frontiers of what we thought that it was possible, no. And that's why we elevate so much the mission and the vision, because we see that we are in an early beginning of the potential of legumes and other plant-based materials and microorganisms in order to get functionalities and attributes that right now we are getting through ingredients that we know with a lot of scientific evidence that are not helping us to have better lives.
Yeah, and so are you saying, and is your mentality generally that there are good ingredients and bad ingredients, or is it also that some types of foods are over consumed? It's that we struggle with the control aspect of eating too much of something and not getting enough, for example, diet diversity.
Exactly. At the end, when you look at the statistics, there are certain foods that overponderate in our diets and that are done no, through ingredients that, when are consumed a lot, they are having a negative metabolic impact. No, simple carbohydrates like sugars, high saturated fats, certain carcinogenic elements that are part of our foods. These are things that we shouldn't be eating a lot. No, so right now we are eating a lot of them, and that's why no our speech goes through that. No, so how we can keep giving no to people the experience that they are looking after with these products, but with a better metabolic impact. And at the end, when we were most of health products that appeared before, at the end were putting in front of the consumers the choice of doing a compromise for experience. No, and we were seeing that this is a compromise that not many people is willing to do. So that is what we want to revolutionize, to keep building from indulgence and sensory, great nutrition and sustainability options. That's why
Yeah, I
we
think
like the term successors, no? In the same way
successes, yeah.
that we are moving, no, to green energies that are far more efficient, that are helping us more, no,
Mm,
to enjoy
mm.
the needs that we have. The same we want to do in food, no, to find better ways to keep doing what we do. This is transforming, no, also the way that we were seeing ourselves from 2017, that we were launching a brand in order to be a symbol, no, of what can be done different. Right now, we see more as our brand a platform to showcase possibilities.
So let's talk about that for a second. So these successes, because you're obviously what you're doing there is pointing to the fact that these things don't have to be a compromise on what you want. They don't have to be an alternative. They can be the evolution of how people consume food or how the food industry is even structured. You're kind of posing it as the next evolution of the food landscape, really. Do you think that there is still a role for meat inside of that in the future? And if so, like, is it a transition? I guess I'm wondering, like, what is your maybe personal belief in how the food system will evolve in the next, 20 or 50 years?
At the end, we have certain planetary limitations that we have to take into account when we are no, more people in the planet consuming much more calories and much more food. At the beginning of the 20th century, we were 1.5 billion humans. Right now, we are 8 billion humans consuming much more. And not only, no, there will be 2 billion more humans coming in the next decades, 3 decades, but at the same time, the levels of consumption of the ones that are living in the planet are much higher, no? So certain ways of producing foods won't be able to be an answer to the needs that we have today, no? Not just from a planetary limitations, but also from a sanitary perspective, no? So at the end, there is a need of a transition here, no? In the same way that from an energy sources, we are moving toward more efficient and green sources. When we look at food, at the end, it's like we scaled the problem very efficiently, but we need better solutions, no? And here it's all about calorie conversion, no? At the end, for example, to get 1 calorie of beef, you need 50 calories of legumes and cereals. And this, when scaled no, to the consumption that we are having today worldwide, means that around more than 80% of all the agricultural land is dedicated to feed animals to only receive less than 20% of the calories, no? And it's because there are more than 80 billion animals farmed in the world. Just that mammals in the wild represent only 4% of the biomass. So it's incredible, no? How we scaled all that. We scaled it so much that just livestock alone emits more greenhouse emissions than the whole transportation industry, no? And even it's the leading cause, just livestock, of deforestation, biodiversity loss of a species, groundwater contamination, and antibiotic resistance. No, so right now it's something that it's part of our identity, but it will evolve. No, and I think that it's in the same way that some centuries ago we tend to use horses to transport ourselves. No, but as we were growing our cities, it was the worst possible solution because it was bringing a lot of even sanitary problems in cities, no? And I imagine that we couldn't be wearing the nice shoes that we are wearing in today's society. But apart from that, no, we evolved, no, to cars that were a solution of these problems, and now we are evolving again our ways of transporting ourselves in the cities, no. So at the end, I think that for sure livestock will keep being part of human societies in a way, but it won't be the best way in order to get to the products that right now we love, no? And I think that this is also challenges that the plant-based meat category has done a great job to communicate to the consumers, no? At the end, this is not an industry that exists to destroy anything. This is an industry that exists in order to renew traditions, no? To be able to guarantee that we can keep eating what we love in a way that it can be produced and eaten every day, no? And that can even allow that the industrial sector and the primary sector can keep being part of this, no? But well, it's very emergent moments, but for sure, when you look at the fundamentals, it's necessary, no? But I think that also the whole movement has to do a better job about communicating the benefits, no? And improving the sensorials in order for people to see that it's really like the electric car, no? In the same way that people see a Tesla as a better car as well.
Yeah, and I think some of the examples of other industries are really important ones to contextualize this. Obviously, there are a lot of issues with something like the fashion industry or now the beauty industry with overconsumption and fast fashion and things like that. But there are so many more options now where you can buy faux leather, or you can buy sustainable. Like I'm addicted to Paravel, a luggage brand that makes like completely repurposed luggage bags. Like I have that option now, and yes, I pay a little bit more and I wait a little bit longer for it to be made. But there are more choices now, and so it's kind of interesting that sometimes in the food space it's so wedded to traditions and the way that things always were, even though those things are not actually that long. We get very wedded to the way that we're comfortable with things and the kind of iconography almost that food represents and how it brings people together and how it stabilizes cultures and things like that. That we feel like that's going to be lost if we make some small changes and alterations and move things along, but things don't have to be lost. And I think that's kind of the hugely powerful message from Heura and Successes and Good Rebels and everything that you're doing is sort of saying, like, we still want to give you that fantastic, kebab. We just want to give you another option that's more sustainable, more nutritious, and more affordable.
I couldn't have said it better.
So I'm really curious then when we were talking about the plant-based industry, obviously I have to ask you this question because I think it would be on top of a lot of people's minds. So it's projected to be an $85 billion market by 2030. It's currently at about 44 billion, so about half of that. And currently is set to make our protein sale 7.7%. So it's still fairly nascent in the context of meat consumption and in the food space. And now it's kind of undergoing a lot of criticism, I would say, particularly because a lot of the big companies have kind of gone after a very fast and heavy. And now we're kind of, this is my reflection, not scaling it back, but really kind of reevaluating how do we do it differently and how do we do it better to really deliver on that customer experience, to deliver on a profitable model for businesses, to really make it more sustainable. So it feels like there's like a little bit of a reset happening with plant-based. What's your reflection with what's happening right now?
There is this say that says, if you are 100 steps ahead, you are a leader, but if you are 1,000 steps ahead, you are a crazy person, no? So I think that the fundamentals of this how big is the impact, no, in especially in plant-based meat industry, is that many people wanted to accelerate it as much as possible, no. At the end, we are talking that the CO2 from one burger made from legumes to one made from animal product is minus 94% of CO2 in our case, and this can be even improved, no. And when you look about other nature impacts KPIs, it's normally close to triple digit, no? So the lever is so big. When you look at the scientific evidence, no, what scientists are telling us is that diet is the biggest lever that we as individuals have in order to tackle, for example, the climate crisis. When we are looking at the new scientific evidence, no, about the carcinogenic impact that certain animal processed products have in our health is so big, no, that I understand, no, that from entrepreneurs to investors to the media, many people, no, wanted to accelerate that. But at the end, we have to meet where consumers are, no? And I think that this is a very emerging industry that is in its infancy, no? And when you look at any industry, well, in the industry that has gone through a big revolution in consumption, it took decades, to build. And I think that especially from the sensory part, from the taste part, we are not where people expect, the products to be. And this will be the most relevant point in order to get to mass adoption, because some people are willing to look for options to eat healthier. Less people are interested in looking for more sustainable options, but all of them want to eat tasty food, no? And they were willing to try, many people, but when the products weren't at the expectations, no, where people were looking for, many people didn't come back, no? And I think that this is the most important summary about this, no? That we were expecting a lot from something that was in the beginning, no? And the negative part is that it's very difficult to get a second opinion when you didn't do a good first impression, no? But at the end, the category will reorganize itself. Those, no, making good products will survive, and the evolution here of technological elements in supply chains will be critical in order to deliver well on these benefits, no, of taste, health, and sustainability.
Yeah, I love that. And some of these products do taste amazing, Eura, for one. But I think
That's
that's
why we
really,
are out here still, no? Because we have
yeah,
been able to achieve repeat rates that are crazy, no?
yeah.
Around 60%, 70% in certain products, while other corporates that rushed into the market were getting 20s to 30%, no? So they were destroying the category, no? At the end, the worst enemy of the category are bad products. And, well, we all have to take perspective sometimes about what will be the impact on something launch and not just big or not to have our brand out there. But we also can learn from that sometimes.
Yeah, highest repeat rates in the plant-based category. I mean, that's incredible. Definitely something to be proud of, and really a testament to the approach that you have that you mentioned before of really focusing on science and that transdisciplinary approach of really thinking about how much more you can get from that food and from the proteins that you're working with. Another really unique thing is the collaboration that's taking place. So actually combining forces as plant-based brands. I think this is just such a great example. I'm like constantly kind of showcasing this to people as an example of what even big brands could be doing when you bring together some of those smaller plant-based players. So there was obviously recent campaigns where you did do collaborative effort with plant-based companies in France to kind of showcase, the power of this industry back to the government and to the everyday consumer.
The category is so emergent that it's important that we build, this space in the mind of different stakeholders, and that's where the collaboration is so important in order to get to consumers and key stakeholders, in order also to understand that this is can be a strategical industry, for the future. At the end, the supply chains of protein are really relevant in many countries, and at the end, from politicians to incumbents in the industry, there is importance, no, in order to look at this with curiosity, with support, in order to facilitate changes that are fundamentally out there and that will come, no? But well, it's interesting that before the future comes, no, and there is always friction against the establishment, and that's where uniting is important in order to articulate better, no, the importance of what we are doing.
It's obviously linked into the good rebels concept as well, because there was like a little bit of rebellion that happened there. One of the things that you said was that you transformed your anger into creating a vehicle for change. I thought that was really interesting because I do think that activism sometimes does come across as kind of like petulant in a way, like a child that's kind of like, no, no, no. And of course, that's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to get you allies, and it's not like it's a closed door in many cases because people find it challenging to work with. So your approach is kind of like removing that and really thinking very openly about how you can enact change through collaboration, through goodness, and through kindness. So it's a really very kind of unique perspective with Good Rebels. Where did that come from, that whole idea?
Comes from our essence, no? Everything that we do comes from our essence, no? At the end, a big belief that when we act from what it matters to us, we really can make a difference, no? Anything that we admire that happen in society has been done by other humans, no? So we have the capacity to do extraordinary things, and these things that right now we see as impossible, if we act on it, we can make that happen, no? But at the end, when we add this concept good, is because also we believe that companies in the 21st century, and when we think about acting, the end, all companies are making people's life better, no? In a way, because we are solving their needs and their problems with solutions. I think that this 21st century put us also the need to connect, to create value in a different way, no? Not just solve the consumer tension and solve the consumer need, but also takes into account societal impact and environmental at the same way, no? And do this multiplied impact in your value chain, in your value proposition, no? That's what we look as a company, and this is part of our essence, and in the way, no, that we translate it to the brand and to the consumers is in order to support any change makers, no? Anyone that goes out there and really acts on what they believe in order to be transformative, no? And in what you were saying, coming from activism, yeah, I think that awareness is super important, but we can't just bring the pressure to people to change, no? And at the end, in what we are trying to do in Heura is collaborate with those creating awareness, but trying to create solutions to reduce the frictions for those that already want to change.
Is there anything that you see as being unjust in the world, or maybe in the European kind of region that you live in, not related maybe to what you're doing with Eura, but something else that's kind of like bothering you, that's not fair and equitable?
There are many things, no, in humans' life that we would like to be different. But at the end, when focusing in the food industry, it's interesting to understand from where we are coming from. No, we are coming from growing a lot the population. So at the end, many things have been optimized in order to achieve scale, shelf life, great taste, facilitate, no, the capacity to bring calories all around, and well, every time optimize for margin, for efficiencies, and for taste, no? So at the end, something that I will put in the energy to transform is in this same equation, no, and of that exists, how we add as well societal interest and environmental interest, no? And it's interesting that sometimes it's easy to blame others. At the end, I'm saying that because there is a big inertia, no, in the food industry that makes sense. The population and the needs grew a lot. But at the end, this is a revolution that we all have to look at ourselves every day, no? How we can contribute to it, no? Without putting pressure to ourselves, but already there are certain steps that we can do, no? And sometimes I try to share, no, with many stakeholders and with the team. This is not only a revolution against others, it's mainly against ourselves, no? And we can't only limit ourselves in our solution ends here. We have to balance as well, scale and invent. In a way, I think that this is the most important part that I try to concentrate in order to live at peace. No? In being aware, being curious, but at the same time, and try and not be ignorant, no, about certain elements that I think that it's important to be aware. But in the other time, try to be uh, to solve the problems through my action, through the actions that I have control about, and understanding, no, really well why certain contexts are like this, in order to live at peace and keep building, no, a solution.
Yeah, I love that. Living at peace. And there's so much empathy in what you're talking about there. Empathy or sympathy, that whether you're talking about a big business partner or you're talking about the end customer who's eating the food, they're trying to make the best choices that they can. They're kind of living in the system that's been designed around them without their choice. And they're trying to make better decisions. So it's not always easy. There are things that we sometimes want or value, but we can't just flick a switch and turn on.
Exactly. We have many frictions in our lives, no? I was talking about taste, but the convenience, no, of certain foods are perfect in order to solve certain situations that right now new categories that want to solve problems didn't achieve, no? So I try to put the responsibility in how we can do better in order to give better solutions to the current context, no? And also it's interesting, going back to a question that you asked me before, that sometimes we were thinking about the revolution of plant-based protein, thinking about the meat alternatives, no? That we like to call them meat successors. But at the end, I think that all this revolution, what it's empowering is new ways of producing foods, no? Starting there, it's allowing us to see that we can structure through legumes, and therefore adding proteins and fibers to categories that didn't have any and that were structured mainly through fats and sugars. So we are developing technologies that, for example, allow us that a mayonnaise, that it's mainly fat, can be structured through proteins and legumes, that a Nutella can do the same, that a peanut butter as well, no? That any kind of very indulgent fatty cream could be full of protein and fiber as the main ingredient in order to structure this indulgence, no? So the interesting part of all that is that when we start to develop that and we talk to big corporates, they say, wow, we were looking, no, for ways to reinventing lipids and the way that we are getting fat in our products, but we could never thought that it will be coming from legumes, no, and that it will help to structure that in this way, no. So I'm saying all this because many even corporates want to integrate certain proposals in their value chain, but they couldn't have until now, no, the technical solutions in order to do that, no? And maybe that's the revolutionary thing that you said about this transdisciplinary approach, no? Some companies have been very focused in sometimes focusing in a single ingredients, but we have been developing a new way of developing full products through mainly the legumes, no, without needs of simple carbohydrates, saturated fats, or even additives to create a range of textures that keeps expanding, no, and that we see that starting, no, from this concept of protein transition, what we are unleashing is the potential of solve many other categories where there are lack right now of technical solutions.
Yeah, and I think that's so incredible. I think that's one of the most exciting parts, genuinely, of where food is headed, particularly with the combination of advancing food through science, broadly speaking, but really almost like breaking down the food molecules and then rebuilding them in a way to make them more efficient, or building into them something that's more advanced, that just, again, like no compromise, no sacrifices needed. You're just getting the added nutrients, or you're getting like lower salt with the same great taste. Like all of those innovations I think are just so extraordinary. So it's really exciting that you're investing in that. I guess a question for you then, kind of linked into that, is I think a lot of the times when you look at the plant-based category, you might get a pushback from the traditional farming industry and the agriculture industry, particularly of like beef farmers or dairy farmers. And I'm like a little bit biased on this because I spent 4 years with Australia's biggest dairy company, and I spent a lot of time on the farms with the dairy farmers. I kind of went on the farms at first thinking that they were, potentially not being ethical, and all of the stories that were being told to me through the media. When I saw it firsthand, these farmers, at least in Australia, they really, really genuinely cared about their cows. They really wanted to maintain the dairy industry in a sustainable way, in an ethical way. And so I have a lot of like personal sympathy for them in the situation that they're in, just knowing that the farmer population is declining quite significantly. But I think that we often forget when we say farmers, we're not just talking about beef farmers or dairy farmers. We're talking about vegetable farmers. We're talking about legume farmers, right? That's a whole growing and important part of the industry, in part because of what you said before, because they feed the livestock, but also because they feed humans. So I guess my very long-winded question for you is, are you working also with the legume farmers or with the agriculture industry on how you can apply that transdisciplinary scientific approach right at the farm?
Right now, our approach is focusing in the product, and then we talk, no, on these ingredients that are mainly nature-based and legumes as the main ingredients, and therefore, no, we collaborate in the supply chain right now with a lot of legume farmers, no, especially the legumes that we use are soy and peas. But in what you are saying, it's like a transition that happened in another industry, no? So at the end, I think that the role of the leaders that we want to push this future is not antagonize against, no, the status quo, but already show solutions that will help to endure the legacy of what people are looking after, no? Because at the end, no one wants to invest in, I don't know, pig's farm, for example, that 15 years, that will have a return of investment in 15 years, that right now is exporting meat to China while they are building their pig farms, and therefore maybe in 15 years they won't be having the capacity to sell the pigs anywhere. And having lives, no, that are not worthy, no, the element in the rural landscape, it's relevant, but all of them want to be relevant part of the food supply chain. So at the end, it's take not that same energy and that exists today, but keep moving with better opportunities, giving also more value to the food that is created in order to find solutions. And sometimes when we think about these disruptive ideas, no, we think that change will happen overnight, but change takes time, and especially in food, but not only because it's a physical consumer goods product, no, not a digital one, but it's very linked, as we were talking before, to our identities, no? So at the end, the companies that are foreseeing a net positive future, what we have to keep doing is to remove friction all the way of the value chain, no? And there, what we are thinking about is how we can start even, well, we are dedicating a lot of scientific resources and things that can take more than 5 years, that at the end go into streams, no? One is how we can even take raw materials in this industry that can come from the upcycling of waste of the food industrial industry in order to keep even improving the CO2 and maybe pursue this dream of having a net positive impact native product. But I don't know if we could achieve that, but that's a relevant point of see that. But also there are certain botanical origins or certain crops that could be very resilient, that could be farmed almost everywhere, that if we could be able to get the proteins and functionalize the proteins to them to use it in the supply chain, that could be revolutionary, no? So we are already partnering up with different stakeholders in order to pursue that, no? At the end, current volumes of the industries that we are talking about are really small, and this is not yet a solution to all, but many are already transitioning their farms because they not only prefer the impact, but also they can have better returns on their work and their investment. It won't be one day from another, but the whole supply chain it's working in order to integrate, no, the ones that were part of industries that in the past were really relevant, but in the future, taking into account the fundamental challenge that we have, it will be difficult, not that have the same weight, but it happens all the time around many industries around our history of humanity.
And thank you for detailing that as well, because I think sometimes, like going back to your point, people feel like change happens really quickly, but change happens slower than what we think. And I think a lot of people, like the everyday person, would probably feel like not much has changed or not much is available because so much of it is behind the scenes in the supply chain, for example. So it's really fascinating all of that that's happening as well. I mean, that's so much knowledge that you have to have. I mean, obviously you're a business owner, you're an expert in this industry and in this field, and you're doing very, very new things. But do you find you constantly have to like educate yourself on new science methods and the full supply chain models and the agriculture industry? Like, how do you stay on top of all of that?
That's the most fascinating thing of my job.
Yeah.
I feel privileged of being able to work with amazing minds. The talent that we have in Eura, the people that we brought to lead, future challenge is incredible, no? So being able to work every day with this talent allowed me to be able to articulate visions of things that I was thinking that were impossible some years ago, no, and sometimes
Mm.
even months ago. So at the end, goes back to my nature. No, I'm someone that it's really curious, that likes to expound boundaries. This is something that energizes me. And then
Hmm.
businessman, it's what helps me to calibrate about how to articulate well resources in order to compensate really well short, medium, and long term.
Yeah, and how to turn that into something that will make a huge impact on the world. So I think, yeah,
Really.
you're doing amazing things. So my last question for you is very much connected into that and your natural curiosity about what's happening in the world and staying 100, not 1,000 steps ahead. Is what your go-to is when
I'm
you
the
want to look at.
1,000 steps
You're
ahead.
the 1,000. I'm the 1,000 as well.
And it brings me a lot of problems in my life, and then I try to deal with that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then bring people from the 100 to the 1,000, which is like a lot of steps in between. It's a bit of a journey. Yeah.
Exactly.
But so my last question for you is what your go-to is when you're trying to get your head completely out of all of this stuff to do with food and the plant-based industry and everything else. What's your go-to?
To look outside, I like learning in general through people. What you were telling before, no, about your experience with farmers, I think that certain testimonies sparks a lot your interest, no, in order then to get deeper into something. At the end, learning, especially through people experiences, is something that I love. Nature, I really like hiking, and then sports. I box, for example. Also do yoga, and these kind of things help me to be grounded as well.
Awesome. Well, your curiosity is definitely paying off, Mark. You're doing amazing things, and thank you for sharing a lot of that with us, and thank you for coming on the show.
Pleasure. Take care.